I'm talking to Iain Sinclair, and Darlinghurst Theatre Company is very fortunate to have on board and directing our upcoming show, Remembering Pirates by Christopher Harley. Iain, you're developing a pretty extraordinary body of work in Australia, but how did you become a theatre director?
Well, I started off as an actor, actually, and I went to NIDA back in '92 with Glenn Hazledine and Anita Haig, Tom Long, Todd McDonald, those guys, but didn't stick around because I was frustrated by the amount of storytelling I could get done as an actor.
So you're an actor, yeah.
Started off that way, yeah, and trained up and all that sort of thing, and then ended up going over to UK and studying directing over there. And I think it has mostly to do with being able to control story more, and my whole life's been wrapped around sort of stories and storytelling in different ways.
Yeah.
And I find that directing is a more fluent way of doing that. And I think also my skill is much better. My dramatic skill is much better objectively than subjectively. I find that it's a lot more comfortable helping actors unlock things than actually being on the other side trying to unlock it myself.
Yeah.
And so that's where it sort of began, I guess. But my first ever role was Nick in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, John Stevens' production. That was in 1990, I think. But yeah, since then, the moment I started directing, it really unlocked my abilities, I think, and that's when I started to really enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite a call to leave NIDA because it's that, preeminent institution where, only a very few people get in, but you left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was mutual. We didn't get on very well, you know.
You couldn't have done the 3 years and then
No,
directed later.
it's-
It was. How many years did you last?
1 year. Yeah.
One?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You
But,
hated it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally did.
So the thing was the control aspect of that because those are very controlled institutions, and
There was that, and also just the fact that I don't think I'm really suited to that particular role in theatre. You know,
performing.
Yeah. I'd occasionally do it. You know, like so. Of course, with all my sons here at the Eternity, I played John Bayliss, and so I do like to get on the other side because it gives you a bit of humility. You know, when you're back in the rehearsal room trying to ask actors to do things that And I think if you haven't been on that side, then you end up sort of disconnecting from the art form a bit as well. So it is important to keep your mind in there. And so I do think a lot about acting theory and acting training work and how to communicate. Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. You're communicating with artists. And so the more you can speak in their language and the more you understand what it's like to be on that side, the better. But at the end of the day, it's good to know what you're good at.
So what drew you to theatre? Why theatre? I mean, you could have been a successful real estate agent. You could have...
yeah, but real estate agents are monsters, right?
You could have done anything. I mean, what drew you to theatre? It's
I think
it's a tough business.
Yeah, but it's an immediate art form. You can actually just decide to do it, and and I'm still doing that to this day, where I'm having meetings with people about putting on shows and I still to this day do unfunded shows right through to big funded shows in sort of equal measure, really. And that's because for me, I'm drawn to putting shows on, and that in theatre you can actually make a decision and get people together who believe in it and do it. And I just happen to enjoy it as well, Yeah, but I think that's what it is mostly, is the immediacy of being able to tell stories.
And
a group of people.
You have a number of motorbikes parked around the world.
Yeah, it's my...
Is that true? The vintage bikes, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it might be my first love, actually, in theatre. Sort of, the two of them have been involved in a dance for a while. Yeah, now that I've got a child, things are a little bit different. But back in the day, my sort of MO was to get a gig and then get paid in one blob for that gig, whatever it was, and then go overseas, buy a very old motorbike, fix it, and ride it until I got another job. And then I'd come back home, and I did that for years, really. And so the inevitable consequence of that is that you end up getting the call while you're somewhere like, I don't know, Cambodia or Chile or somewhere else, and you've got to deposit the bike somewhere. And I get emotional about them because I work on them a bit, so I end up leaving them under a tarpaulin or parked in a pigsty. There's one. I've got one in a Russian bike in a pigsty in Cambodia, even as we speak. But yeah, so that's what I used to do, and so it's sort of an inevitable consequence of that, I'd end up with old bikes parked somewhere all over the world.
And they were intrepid destinations. So places like Cambodia and riding you had a terrible accident in Cambodia where you nearly killed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? Because that was incredible.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate.
It's one of the most amazing stories I've heard. I'm telling it.
Right. Yeah, where do I begin with that? But I guess, so I used to go over to Vietnam quite a bit, and Vietnam's a motorcycle country for anyone who's been there, and like the streets are just swarming with them, of various different kinds. But there's a really rich sort of history with them as well, because the bikes in the north, when the VC1, when North Vietnam got into power, the whole place was flooded with Soviet motorcycles. Particularly sort of this crazy old dirty two-stroke one called the Ural, which is basically a giant lawnmower. It's a big messy thing, but it goes anywhere and can sort of be fixed, regardless of what happens to it. So I was riding one of those down. I rode from Hanoi down to Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, and then I crossed over into Cambodia.
Oh, a long trip.
Yeah. That's the whole idea. The name of the game was to fix them and then ride as far as you can until they either stop running or you get another gig. Sort of the way it worked. And that time though, it was Chinese New Year, and I got T-boned coming from a bike coming out of a karaoke bar, and went over the top, broke my neck, my back, all my ribs, and my shoulder blade. My collarbone, which stuck through, and then I was stuck in a clinic for quite a while over there. Got back here, and they ended up plating it all up and sticking all my shoulder back together again. But it failed, so they took a chunk of my hip out. So hip bone was connected to the shoulder bone for a bit, and they stuck a metal plate on there. And then I thought everything would be fine after that, and I was doing an ATYP show at the start of the year, and I bent over to tie my shoelace, and my arm went boing like that. And what happened was, the guy who saved my life, Tony, when he got me, he stuck, there was a bit of bone sticking out of my shoulder, he stuck it back in with his thumb, and when he did that, he ended up putting acne, like pimples, acne bacteria, inside my bone marrow, which just lay there dormantly. And then when they did all the bone graft stuff, it awoke it, the acne bacteria. So I had acne in my bones, and it just slowly ate away all of the bone graft, and then progressed all the way through to my collarbone. So even to this day, I've just got an empty gap there now. It's like 2 pinball flippers, but it turns out you don't need one.
But you also nearly murdered the guys who hit you. Is that right? You told me.
Yeah. I was unconscious for that, but the story that Tony tells me is that when he came to pick me up, the guys were assaulting me who'd hit me. And the reasoning that he said for that is that if you die, it's actually better for them, because they don't have to go through all the rigmarole of keeping you alive and the legalities and everything. So it's actually sort of more convenient over there if there's a fatality.
Yeah. And how do you reconcile? I mean, your travels sound quite interesting and really intrepid. You're not off to London to see plays.
Well, I did all that too. But I don't know. There's a reckless streak in most people who are into bikes, I think, and an adventurous streak. But I've always had that. I've always wandered around, tried to stretch myself over the globe as far as I can. So, went around India on a bullet back in the day, and crossed over the Andes in winter over to Buenos Aires and Valparaiso and back and stuff like that. I don't know, but it's a bit like putting on plays. It's venturing into the unknown and taking risks and putting your ass on the line is sort of fun, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, Remembering Pirates is a brand new play, and
isn't it like
it's a terribly risky business in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. But isn't it great when you like terrify yourself and then come out the other end?
Yes, it
like
is.
there's a reward there which you don't get if you never go.
No.
And you know, you live in the country or you live in the city, don't you? Like that's the
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you travel between doing established works to really raw.
Yeah, and where possible, I try to do those in tandem, or I try to alternate them. You know, so and I've been successful over the past few years. So say from last year where I did Matthew Ryan's Brisbane for Queensland Theatre Company, I then went on to do Midsummer Night's Dream. You know, and then I went. Yeah, so I think I've got the chronology wrong there. I've forgotten all the plays I've done in the past couple of years. But yeah, I've completely lost.
No,
it.
don't worry, that's okay.
Cut that.
Look it up.
Yeah. Except to say that wherever possible, I do a classic and then I do a new work.
Yeah.
Because the classics are good fun because the dramaturgy's intact. You know, somebody's already. So it's yours to ruin in a way. You know, and so you learn a lot from doing a Thornton Wilder or an Arthur Miller or a Sarah Rule or whatever. You know, like you learn from those playwrights, and then you apply that to the new work. And the new work, but the new work also teaches you, you know, that old works were new works once as well, you know, and so there's a really good tension in all of that. And I think there's something, I don't know, something a bit gutless about just putting on plays that other people have done or something. Or what do? You end up becoming a stylist rather than an artist, I think, if you're just doing stuff that other people have done, you know, jumping someone else's train.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to get out there and do the hard ones as well.
Is Remembering Pirates a hard one?
Every play is a hard one, I think, and I think that goes. That goes for any play, isn't it? They all have difficult births. If they're not difficult, then you're probably not delving deep enough into the culture. And theatre's really good at uncovering stuff that we're always trying to hide from, and Christopher's doing that in this play. You know, this is a play about grief. More than anything, and it's upsetting to open that stuff up, and all of us are exposing ourselves in the rehearsal room, you know, emotionally to you know, I mean, this is a play that takes you down the path where you start entertaining the idea of what it would be like to lose a brother, you know, to have a member of your family disappear. And what impact that has on you emotionally and psychologically and imaginatively, you know, what happens to when a young mind gets traumatized. And Christopher's been really brave in exploring the material here, and he's really putting himself on the line. And you know, there are things about this play which are logically difficult, but emotionally it's very cogent. You know, and so one of the things we've been doing in the room is wrestling, trying to get the logic and grief to sort of inhabit the same space together, but they can't. They'll always fight each other, you know, because emotions and thoughts are in a constant wrangle, you know. The proof of that is just if somebody asks you to cheer up. You know, if you're having a bad day and somebody says, "Hey, cheer up," what your first reaction is to rebel against it. So these things are in a constant tension, and what fun it is to get sort of emotionally courageous people in a room and fling it around and find out what sticks. And that's what Remembering Pirates is, you know.
And then Chris has framed it in a genre which is a bit familiar in a way. How would you describe the genre?
I think I'd describe it as magical, psychological realism.
Which we see a lot of.
Yeah.
Well, no, we don't.
Actually, I mean, in the Antipodes, in the southern hemisphere, we do a lot more of it, I think. You know, South Americans are of course, are so famous for it. But Australia has its own version of magic realism as well, I think. It's just needs more stage time. And this is certainly a piece that explores a really deep, dark thing in a very Australian way, you know. But films like The Babadook come to mind with that kind of, you know, thinking is the sort of stuff that Christopher Harley's delving into here, and yeah, we'll find out if it makes sense. But I know that somewhere spiritually and emotionally it does already, and if you've got that happening in theatre, then you know the rest will take care of itself, I think. Yeah. You know, but it's a play where Peter Pan turns up, but it's not necessarily the Peter Pan that Walt Disney presented to us, or it necessarily even J.M. Barrie. Like that's the starting point for something else, you know. And Christopher's artistic exploration, his literary exploration of this, and his theatrical exploration is really courageous. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the most affecting plays I've ever read in terms of where it's going conceptually and philosophically, and out of the mind of it. He's 29? 29?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he's got a voice like that I haven't heard in Australian theatre. You know, I work for Playwriting Australia, so I read anything up to 300 scripts a year, and this is a new voice trying new things, and for that reason alone, it's worth giving it the go, you know, and getting like really testing its mettle and seeing if he can prove himself. So it's good for the culture, you know, to take these chances.
Beautiful. Thank you, Iain. Thank you.
My pleasure.